because when we start talking about really heavy subject matter like race, it's easy for students from all backgrounds to just shut down and say, you know what, I'm not ready to deal with this. And I mean, that's completely valid as well, but I just wanted them to feel like they didn't have to shut down if they didn't need to shut down. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Caffeinated Classroom. My name is Marie. If you've not been here before, I am an English teacher in San Diego, California, and today is the first work day of daylight savings time this year. I'm not gonna lie, I just had the moment. It's a peak for me. It's a pinnacle moment for me. I am fully jealous of my own children, of my daughter, my 2-year-old, who is still asleep. I'm so dignified. I'm jealous of my 2-year-old who is still asleep. So let's just say that my goals for today are pretty low. I just need to make sure I get through the day well and I get prepped for tomorrow. So wish me luck on that. Okay, so fun fact, I did make it through the day. I was prepared for every period by the skin of my teeth, but that's okay. You know, this is just the season. Like I keep saying, I'm like a first year, 12th year, or like a 12th, oh my gosh, I can't even think of my own saying. I'm a 12th year, first year teacher because I'm redoing everything. And I keep saying it over and over again because I'm trying to remind myself that that's okay. So I can tell somebody else till I'm blue in the face that like, it's okay to not have everything perfectly done and to like stumble a little bit and figure it out as you go. But then like reflecting that back on myself is very, very difficult and I am aware of it. And this is me reflecting as an educator. But I did want to just kind of bring up what I have been working on with my freshmen, specifically with our discussion of and our study of Mice and Men. Of Mice and Men is one of those novels that has a lot, I mean, it is teeny tiny. It's like barely over 100 pages. It's like 107. And it is just packed with so much like social issue goodness. I'm not speaking very well right now, but it's a lot to unpack. And so I have found myself in the past, because in my district, it's a 9th grade novel, and Steinbeck is hard often for our students to connect with, just because it's Steinbeck, for crying out loud. East of Eden is an 11th grade novel, if that gives you any like context. And I find that of Mice and Men, I think because it's short and because the main storyline is about the two friends, it's something that lends itself well to 9th grade. But I don't really focus too much on the friendship. I focus more on like power struggles and who has power and who does not have power among these characters and what power really is and what it really, really is. And so I'm also working with an amazing team. I've said it before and I'll say it again. My team on our freshman level has made the most incredible, like really impactful and well-developed assessments and activities that just like guide them through the story really well. But there are basically 3 big issues that we're looking at. We're looking at like socioeconomic status, right? The power of the haves and the have-nots. We're talking about race issues because Crooks is our only character of color. He's our only non-white character. And we're talking about gender issues because Curly's wife is our only non-male character. She's our only female. So today was our first, we're going to be looking at a quiz for chapter 3, and chapter 3 is where Crooks is introduced for the first time. They never name Crooks. They call him a racial slur, and he doesn't get any, he gets, actually, as one of my students very astutely put it today, he gets a label, not a name. And they kind of made that connection on their own, that Curly's wife, they're like, does she ever get a name? And I was like, why don't you just wait and see? Let's focus on the task at hand, which is today, race. We're talking about Crooks. And so I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about how I opened up this conversation. I didn't want to take too deep of a dive into racial issues and racial injustice in the United States because my students are not ready for that yet. Our class culture is not quite, our community is not strong enough yet that we can take that dive. We need to go layer by layer to be able to have real, actual, like legitimate and impactful conversations that I think will be growing moments for all of us in the room, like not just them, but myself as well. And so I opened up our discussion of race today with a discussion of language. And I will actually show you guys. I had them do a little quick write before they read an article, and then we're gonna end up discussing the article tomorrow when they are all to have already read the entire chapter of chapter 3 of Mice and Men. So let me show you what I had them write about. And then I want to just tell you a little bit about the conversation that we had, because I was really impressed with, one, what they were willing to share among each other because they felt safe, because we keep talking about our expectations in this room. Before I actually get going into these slides, I opened the whole entire conversation up with just, you know, talking about these expectations of maturity and respect, always above all else, to form empathy for others. And then I said, listen, we are gonna start talking about things that are taboo. Here's what taboo means, like, you know, it's something you just don't talk about. And understand that under this expectation of maturity and respect that we have for each other within all beings in this room, also think about how your individual perspective, your lens on life, comes from your background and your experiences thus far. And every single one of us, no matter how similar you might look, either in person or on paper, to the person next to you or to another person in this room, you are both from completely different households. You're from completely different families and backgrounds and cultures within the community of your own, like, small family unit. So just know that you are safe in what you think in here, and whatever you are willing to share, thank you for that. And we are all doing this in a way to try and find common ground and to just, like, open our eyes up to, like, the experience of our fellow humans. I said it more eloquently to my students, I think. I don't know, I kind of blacked out. But I didn't actually black out. But that's what I said in getting ready. So the slide that I'm about to show you is a pre-write that was before we read this article, which is entitled "When Black and White Turn Gray," and it is by Phil Taylor is the name of the writer of the article. And the version that I have is printed. It's just a little one-pager. I read it in Sports Illustrated, actually, in November of 2013. And if I can find this online, I have a photocopy of it, because some of my colleagues have been using this article with To Kill a Mockingbird and with Of Mice and Men. And if I can find it, I will link it down below. So if you find the link down below, that means that I found it. But in preparation, where this article talks about use of the N-word just in this author's life and in, like, society and in pop culture, and it's absolutely perfect because it goes right along with this chapter of Mice and Men. Here's what I did to prep my students for this conversation and get them ready for even reading the article in the first place, to get them ready and primed to actually have this conversation. There was a lot of, like, layers to this onion today, because I wanted to make sure that this is done tactfully, mindfully, and that everybody feels a part of this conversation, no matter what their experience and background is with any sorts of the issues that we are talking about. Today we were specifically talking about race as it pertains to Of Mice and Men. So here, okay, I'll finally show you. So this is what they were going off of. I spent a few minutes unpacking these questions, and I just said, you're going to write for 5 minutes, but don't start writing until I say start writing, right? I gave them a 5-minute timer. First, I was asking them, what are the restrictions or rules regarding language in your home? Which words and or topics are absolutely never acceptable? I mean, within, like, the community of your own household. How has this evolved as you've grown older? And then I asked them to reflect on the ways that the language you use and that you hear, like things that you experience around you, how these things change depending on your surroundings and situations, who you're with, who is speaking, who is around them. Yes. So kiddos had 5 minutes to write, and then we shared out some of the things. And I try to share things with them that are appropriate to the situation and appropriate to the topic that we're talking about. And I just try to make it really clear that when I share things, I want them to see that, like, this is my lens and this is my experience that I'm sharing with you. So it's okay to share your own. And I can only speak from my own experience and from things that I have sought out for information, and, you know, no matter the topic that we're talking about. And so when we started just talking about, like, what are the words that you like, what are the restrictions or the rules, like, regarding language in your house? And, you know, some students said, like, oh, I'm not allowed to say anything that you couldn't say, like, in church. Or some kids would say, yeah, my mom doesn't care as long as my brother's not around. Or, like, you know, we had the whole, like, it ran the gamut of like what kids are and aren't allowed to say at home, and I thought it was really interesting. And they started talking about, I actually had a few students who speak multiple language, so like their parents speak Spanish at home, so in their home it's primarily Spanish, but everybody also speaks English, or they speak English only. I had multiple students share the same kind of insight, and they were saying that some words in English are just what they are. Like they're just kind of a swear word and it's not that big of a deal. But if you directly translate that into, like, for instance, this girl who was talking said Spanish, it's like so bad. Like the connotation is so bad that she could never say it in Spanish. But in English, it's not that big of a deal because she could like quote a movie or something. And I just thought it was a really interesting way to like talk about code switching and how this happens situationally for most people no matter what. So that was a long conversation, but it was really good and it was a great community builder. Like I saw, you could just feel the, like, you could just feel the atmosphere of the room just get a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more like put together. Okay, so after this extremely long and drawn out conversation, but was absolutely necessary and completely worthwhile, I had students turn to the copies of the article and they had to read through it 2 times. And I said, the first time, I don't want to see anything in your hands, no writing utensils, no, and they're like, don't you want us to annotate? And I said, not yet. Just read through it, right? And I gave them a purpose for reading. Their purpose for reading was, if I called on them after they read the article, they needed to be able to give me a 1-sentence summary, right? Like just tell me what the main idea of the article is. I'm getting at, what's the claim? Now, and we started this in class and they have to do it for homework, they had to mark the text for the second read through. They needed to, here I can actually even show you their instructions. First read through, no marks, just read. Your purpose to understand the central message of the text. Then their second read through is that they need to mark and circle key terms and underline the main ideas or claims that the author makes. And then here are just some ideas of what they can annotate about. And then at the end, they need to write an actual like claim or like central idea. I told them to just use like a couple of sentences. So both of my classes did not get through the second read, or actually I think one of my classes got through, but we haven't talked through their annotations just yet. It's gonna be perfect because tomorrow, like I said, they have their quiz on chapter 3, which is where Crooks is introduced, but he is never named in the chapter. And so I think the whole idea behind him being given a label, as my students so astutely put it, and not given a name in this chapter is perfect when we talk about language and the language that we use and who can use what language and when they can use it and how and why and what and the codes that we use depending on our situation. I think it's bringing them a little bit more understanding to these terms that they hear on campus and that they hear in pop culture and that sometimes they say in different contexts, whether they are right or wrong. I'm trying to give them a better understanding of how language works and therefore the power that they have in using certain words and in refraining from using certain words, and they have a little bit more of an informed decision about these things. So that is a lot, but that's what we're working on. And I'm excited to see then the next conversation that this evolves into. And we're gonna get talking about the stuff that goes on with Curly's wife. And there are a lot of parallels between Crooks and Curly's wife. And there are also a lot of contrasts between the two characters. And so I think that that's gonna be an interesting conversation to have students talk about power and what is real power, what is perceived power, and where does it come from, who gives it to you, who has it. Yeah. So that's where we're at with this conversation. I just wanted to let you know like how I open up this kind of a conversation in my classroom so that it is a more productive conversation. Because when we start talking about really heavy subject matter like race, it's easy for students from all backgrounds to just shut down and say, you know what, I'm not ready to deal with this. And I mean, that's completely valid as well, but I just wanted them to feel like they didn't have to shut down if they didn't need to shut down. So with that, I need to get out of here and go get my kiddos. So if you've not already subscribed, please take a moment to do so. Like this video, comment down below different thoughts that you have, ideas that you have, things that come to mind, because I love sharing the wealth with other educators. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.